Welcome back to the Hawks from Room podcast, episode 9. I believe at this point, I think I'm going to start calling this a pregame show when I end up taping a little bit closer to the games that's about to tip off. The Hawks have won 4 games in a row. For the way that this season started, that's a great streak, especially considering the teams that they beat. They, of course, beat Cleveland back to back. The Hornets, who typically dog walk us, we were able to beat them as well. And we got a great W over DeJounte Murray and the Pelicans by a 12-point margin. Now, the Hawks are playing the Bucks tonight at 8 p.m. The Hawks have not won 5 games in a row since 2 seasons ago in 2023, the 2022-2023 season. So they've got a great chance to continue to building on this momentum against Milwaukee. I want to start this episode by looking at some changes and fluctuations that I've noticed throughout the way that the Hawks are playing basketball on both ends. So here's the first. We're going to look at the offense first, right? I'm going to make a graphic eventually that's going to make this a little bit more digestible. The Hawks have seen a massive improvement in the number of off-ball actions. So they're cutting at a much higher frequency. They're averaging more points off of movement per 75 possessions, and they've become much more effective scoring out of handoff scenarios. They've also drastically decreased less efficient possessions. So they have the 26th lowest percentage of their possessions in the half court, which means that they're getting out in transition a lot more. They're not isoing at nearly as high of a frequency as they did last year. That's to be expected with DeJounte, especially with the fact that Trae has never been a great or consistent ISO scorer. And now that we don't have that same like super ISO heavy, like dribble, hezzy, tween personnel, it's good to see that they've gotten away from that. And they're not forcing that at this point in either Jalen Johnson, Dyson, Zaccharie Risacher's career, even if Trae and Bogdanovich can get to their spots from time to time. Other thing is they've drastically decreased the amount of field goal attempts they're taking off the dribble. So in the year prior, they were taking about 27% of their field goal attempts off the dribble, which was 7th, and that's fallen all the way to below 20%, which is now 28th. And they're also pretty much have cut the mid-range out of their shot profile. Of course, DeJounte Murray was very heavy in the mid-range, and they've cut that out. And again, it makes sense with the personnel. Now, here's the results. Overall shot quality. You can see that the Hawks have went from 8th to 1st. They're taking more shots at the rim than they did last season, improving by almost 3%. And they're now 2nd in the league in the percentage of the shots coming at the rim. They've also have become the first team in paint field goal attempt rate. They're getting out in transition much more than they did last year. And they've also generating about 5% more wide open three-point attempts than they did last year. Some of that may have to do with the lack of shooting gravity for both Dyson Daniels and Zaccharie Risacher. But if these numbers remain consistent with DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovich playing more minutes, then I think we can really point to the system working a little bit more, generating a little bit higher quality shots than they did last year for sure. They've also seen a big increase in their pace where they're now averaging 104 possessions per game. And they also have seen a large jump in the percentage of possessions in the bonus. So what this essentially means is that last year, the Hawks were in the bonus about 20% of the time, which was the 26th best. They've now improved that by almost 5 percentage points, and they're now 9th. And so there's an intrinsic value of being in the bonus, right? Teams are a little bit more scared to play physical. You can generate easy points by getting to the free throw line. On average, being in the bonus adds 2 points to your offensive rating. And so for a team that lacks that half-court creation, like holistically across the roster, it is so important that they're able to put pressure on the rim, which drives free throw attempts, which puts teams in the bonus. And they also are able to get out in transition. So all great indicators of building a more cohesive offense going forward. And this has also resulted in their potential assists per game spiking to 4th best in the NBA. So here's somehow how I summed it up. Quick decisions, plenty of threes. Well, kind of not really. They still need to get work on that. And an increased emphasis on movement and getting out in transition has enabled the Hawks offense to remain effective in the clutch. We have the 4th best clutch record, the 3rd highest net rating, and the 5th offense. Last year, we were dreadful, terrible, god awful in the clutch. Okay. We had the 19th best clutch record last year. We had a 21st ranked offense, a lot of my turn, his turn, very stagnant offense. But as we'll get into with this episode in particular, we'll look at what they're doing a little bit different this year. Defensively, we've seen the Hawks really key in on their transition defense. Last year, they were the worst transition defense in the NBA. They've climbed all the way to 6th. A lot of that is personnel, but I also think in general, Ime Udoka made a really an interesting statement. He said that transition defense starts with offensive rebounding. And that makes sense. If you can secure the rebound before the defense does, then they don't even get a chance to get out in transition. And the guys like Dyson Daniels, Zaccharie Risacher, who are really good at just finding those open creases and getting to the glass, along with guys like, of course, Clint Capella dominating the offensive glass. I think that's helped their offense, their transition defense. I mean, they've also drastically improved in roll man points per possession allowed. So this is essentially if there's a pick set and the big rolls to the basket, how many points per possession is the roll man scoring? The Hawks have become one of the best teams in the league at stopping that after being one of the worst. And so you also see a huge decrease in the amount of paint points they're allowing, going from 25th worst to 7th best. A lot of this is Dyson and Risacher, in my opinion, as well as Kobe Bufkin getting more minutes. The Hawks' perimeter defense has become incredibly disruptive. Last year, they were 11th. They were generally pretty disruptive with DeJounte Murray, of course, and Bogdan Bogdanovic getting the passing lanes. This year, they are second, averaging 19.3 deflections per game. The Hawks have been very intentional about tightening up their transitioning defense, as I mentioned before, but also cutting off the paint. And so what's resulted in that is, yes, they're not allowing a lot of points in the paint. They've been one of the best rim protecting teams in the NBA, but they're allowing a ton of open threes and they're getting blitz from there. And also the ball handlers. Remember, we talked about how the roll man is not scoring efficiently against the Hawks. Pick and roll ball handlers are absolutely scoring efficiently against the Hawks, where they are averaging 0.99 points per possession. That's the worst efficiency allowed by any defense in the NBA. I've talked about this in the prior episode as well. Here's that graph showing just how much of an outlier the Hawks' opponents are performing on the volume that they're allowing. Now, despite all that, right, the Hawks are getting killed from the three-point line. Pick and roll ball handlers are killing them off the dribble. The Hawks' defense has improved drastically, okay? Last year, the Hawks had the 5th worst defense in the NBA, and it was 3.8 points worse than league average. This year, we have the 16th best, right? 115.0. So that's a plus 4.4 improvement. Well, it technically minus, but yeah. And it's only 1.1 points worse than league average. So Hawks have become, relative to the rest of the NBA, a much more solid defense. And they've done this by offsetting the three-point barrage with outscoring teams in the paint. They outscore teams in the paint by the second biggest margin in the NBA. And some of that is a defensive scheme. And a lot of that is also them getting to the rim a lot more. And I think the defense will improve throughout the season. I think opponents are still experiencing some outlier shooting. They should get more comfortable in the scheme. And then the three-point differential should hopefully shrink with DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic back in the rotation. So to pivot back to looking particularly at this game, the Hawks' disruptiveness, that's been a huge key point in how they've been able to survive defensively. And of course, Dyson Daniels containing guys at the point of attack has been an absolute blessing. In this game, the Hawks had 24 deflections. New Orleans had 17. So here is a couple of clips I want to share. I think the Hawks are at the point where they've experienced the luxuries of course, not just having Dyson Daniels at the point of attack, but I think Risacher is growing quickly into being another great defensive option for the Hawks on perimeter ball handlers. He's getting more and more comfortable, not just on the defensive end either. And we'll talk about him on offense as well. So let's go ahead and share this screen. Here's a couple clips of the guys just being disruptive. I really just love watching Dyson play defense because of how much. Sorry, where'd it go? Oh, he was right here, I believe. Yeah, let's start with this clip. He's just so much fun to watch on the defensive end, and he's never really taken out of a play. Like here, he's trailing behind CJ McCollum, but he's able to get back in the play, and he makes contact with the ball here. And as he makes contact with the ball, Clint Capella gets his hands on it. And also another thing about this game, I don't know if I've ever seen teams fumble loose balls and rebounds this much. Like it was ridiculous how many offensive rebounds New Orleans and extra shot attempts that they got out of sequences like this where the Hawks like pretty easily took the ball away. And so New Orleans had a +4 in terms of offensive rebounds, and they also outscored the Hawks by 12 in second chance points. A lot of that coming off of possessions like this, where you can see even Clint Capella thought the Hawks were surely going to get that pass. Like he was like, what happened? some more Dyson film. Like, he just has great hands, and I think it's really tough for anyone to make a pass around him. Like, I feel like you can almost see a sense of panic on Trey Murphy's face when he realizes what they just tried to do. If I was an offense, I probably would just keep the ball away from him as much as possible. He's already moving to cut this off. Like, it's unreal, his anticipation. As soon as he sees his backdoor cut and DeAndre Hunter's out of position, Dyson's on the move. And his hands and his timing is so perfect that he's just able to completely take that ball away. And the Hawks are out and running. Now, this play did lead to something really embarrassing, which unfortunately I don't have a clip for. But basically, Trae went up and tried to pass it behind his back to Onyeka, and it was just a turnover. And so we will have to talk about his sort of passive approach to scoring this year, because I do think it's not exactly a problem yet, but it's something that we need to keep an eye on. And it's not just Risacher or Dyson that are become super disruptive, although they led the Hawks in deflections yet again for what feels like multiple times this season. Risacher had 5, Dyson had 5. I think Trae has given and shown a lot of effort. Here he stands up Brandon Boston, and then the ball gets run out. Risacher makes a really, really impressive reverse layup. This is also, by the way, like, my high school coaches will be screaming at me if we ever ran a 3-on-1 fast break like this. Like, there's just not enough spacing out. Risacher doesn't take a wide enough angle to force DeJounte to commit. But anyways, yeah, Risacher's able to make it work because he's able to get up and under the basket. Let's see. This is the play I was originally looking for. He's just so dangerous shooting gaps. As soon as a big man, here's the thing too, like, big men will throw sitting ducks on passes. A lot of times defenses will just allow that to happen because, you know, these bigs get used to getting into these routines, sort of, okay, I'm going to dribble slowly this way and I'm going to reverse it that way. They don't put a lot of heat on the ball. And Dyson knows that. So he can just shoot that gap. And he's one of the best players in the NBA at turning his defensive plays into offensive points, especially as he's gotten more and more confident. And because he gets so many of these takeaways that lead to wide open runways. And I think it's just a great tone setter for the Hawks defense. He's kind of like one of those safeties that just you don't ever want to throw anywhere. Like, offenses should stay out of his area, just like you would scheme away from someone like Earl Thomas or like Deion Sanders. Like, he's such an imposing defender that I wonder how many offensive points that he saves just by denying the ball going to a team's best scores. Like, that's how impressive I think he is as a defender. And that's not even to mention like the on-ball stuff, but just his impact off the ball. And of course, some of that disruption also comes from Jalen Johnson, who is super athletic and disruptive in his own right. Here's another example of just the Hawks deflection is not, you're not going to recover every deflection, but they had multiple moments like these where it turns into an open shot for the Pelicans because of the deflection, unfortunately. And so I think they could have had an even better defensive performance if they got a little bit luckier on stuff like that. I've also liked how great the Hawks have been at digging on ball handlers as they go past them. Risacher has unreal hands. Like, the fact that he's able to knock that ball out without really taking a step towards DeJounte is crazy. He's got a really nice wingspan. Ball's fumbled all around. Hawks are competing. They're trying to get out of DeJounte's hands, and they eventually get it away from him, and they get to go the other way. Another thing I've mentioned a little bit about Trae's scrappiness. We also have seen that from pretty much every guard in the Hawks rotation. So Kobe Bufkin here, he gets screened pretty hard. Well, not this point. So this, I thought was a different play. So the Hawks opted to switch this screen, which I wasn't a huge fan of at first. But as CJ McCollum goes into the step back, DeAndre Hunter actually scrams Kobe Bufkin off of Yeeves Missy. And so that way, when the shot goes up, it's DeAndre Hunter boxing out Yeeves instead of Kobe Bufkin. And so I think when you switch, you have to switch smartly and judiciously. I think Kobe could have gotten over this screen, right? I think there's enough space and time for him to get back in front of CJ McCollum. But if they do opt to switch a 1-through-5 pick and roll, then the wings on the Hawks have to be smart enough to scram their guards out of that situation. And so this is a really good defensive awareness from DeAndre Hunter. And then to make contact with Yeeves and keep him off the glass, that was a 10 out of a 10 defensive possession in my mind. Here's another clip of just Trae playing solid defense. Brandon Boston is not a huge guy, but he's obviously a lot taller and presumably a lot stronger. They try to go at him with Brandon a couple of times, and obviously Brandon's going to win some of those, but I thought Trae competed pretty well. here's another clip just highlighting Zach's timing with his hands. I think like this is definitely one of the more outlier gifts in the NBA. Like it just a lot of times when you see guys swipe down, they're gonna rake the arm, they're gonna rake the wrist. And I don't necessarily always I don't see that a lot with Zach. I feel like it's more so like it's like a jab. It's like a he just jars it out just like someone's punching out a fumble. And the like him and Dyson are becoming really, really a super disruptive duo. And I don't think teams, like I said, like one of my biggest prize of joy this season has been knowing that the Hawks guards and wings are not letting guys get a night off. And it's not going to be a night that you can just sort of like turn your brain off and just go through the motions against the Hawks anymore. So that's really cool to see. I want to talk specifically about Jalen Johnson. I had slight skepticisms about him coming to the season, and it wasn't anything, like super pressing. It's just more so I wanted to see how he would look as a secondary guy on the team, where he's got a little bit more half court shot creation duties. And I think what's become really beautiful about him is that he's blending the ability to being a play finisher and an initiator and a transition threat really, really well this year. And it's allowed the Hawks to do some pretty interesting things at the end of games in particular. But I want to start with this play because I think this is such a star level pass and such a star level play. Grabs a rebound, right? He gets out in transition. 3 blue jerseys in front of him. Gathers with his right as he's going up for a shot. Like at this point, everyone on this court, probably even DeAndre Hunter, is convinced the shot is going up. And yet he's able to switch hands and throw this with his left hand before landing. And look where the ball goes, right to DeAndre Hunter for an open 3. This is a special play. Like this is an all-star level pass. And that's not the type of playmaking or thought process that you see from guys this young, this talented, this athletic, this gifted. So I really love seeing that play for him. And here, let me see if I can find you. Here's also his growth, like as an offensive player. He's been a pretty good play finisher his whole career, just because he's so tall, so strong, so athletic. But now they have him running pick and roll, and flowing into these handoffs, and he's becoming just a lot more decisive attacking the rim. A lot of times I felt like he didn't take advantage of his size and his momentum getting downhill. He's been a lot better at that this season, and it's helped him with the way that he's closed games and just been a lot more efficient. Here's another example of him using his size to his advantage. Too often last year, I felt like he turned his back on some other players. So when the double comes and he faces CJ McCollum, he's facing up, assesses the situation, and just goes right at him, without opening himself up to an offensive foul. And one thing I've loved to see from both him and Trae in the clutch this season, they're going to alternate who brings the ball up. They're going to alternate who sets the screen for each other. So this is going to be an inverted pick and roll. So Trae's coming, sort of ghosts the screen, and it's just enough of a hesitancy for Jalen to then flow into this handoff into DeAndre Hunter, where he can again use his frame as a screener to generate a little bit of space, and it's nylon for DeAndre Hunter. And you see that offensive versatility when he's then used instead of as an initiator, or then now he becomes the play finisher. So he flows into this with Bogdan Bogdanovic, sets the screen, and now he's going up and over the top of Yeezy Missy. And I thought, again, here, roles are reversed. Now Jalen's the one setting the screen, and he gets enough of a runway. There's no tag from the Pelicans, and you simply cannot do this. And so he rises up, open runway, easy 2 points. I thought this was a really emblematic finish to not just this season, but as the Hawks are playing an opponent who feature a guy that was supposed to be part of our long-term future. To see the two franchise guys throwing a lob like this, 32 seconds on the clock to really punctuate the win, I thought it was a really cool moment. And this is the vision for what you want to do with Trae going forward. Put him around athletes, allow him to sort of really embrace being a playmaker first, and you're just going to reap the benefits. Now, with that being said, Trae has absolutely been a playmaker first, and he's sort of been treating scoring like a second option. I can't remember the last time he's not been the leading scorer for the Hawks this many times, this many games in a row. He is leading the league in assists, 12.2, which is absolutely ridiculous. He's also experiencing maybe his roughest start to the season in terms of shooting, and I think some of that is Achilles related. But I also think he's been passive in a really weird way. And I've watched Trae his whole career. I feel like I've never really seen him do this often. But the thing that I've seen him do a lot is pick the ball up early out of pick and roll, out of handoffs, and that is so uncharacteristic for him. So here he's gonna turn the corner and pick the ball up. And to an extent, this doesn't necessarily kill the play or make it incredibly stagnant, but it's just so weird from him, especially because he's someone who typically is probing the defense. I do wonder if he considered throwing a lob here. Here's another example of just how often he's doing this. It feels like it's happening at least 4 or 5 times a game, to the point where I do wonder if this is an Achilles thing, if this is something that the coaching staff wants him to experiment with. But I can't imagine that this is a more efficient or a more effective way for him to orchestrate the offense, picking the ball up this early. He's still, because he is a really gifted passer and he has great like floor vision, he's not turning the ball over crazy on here, but he's not putting any pressure on the defense. A lot of these possessions come down to guys making tough shots because Trae is an attacking and pick and roll. And these guys have been a lot more capable of it than I would have expected. I talked about that in the end of the Cleveland game and how they run this inverted pick and roll, but Trae and Jalen weren't attacking, so they just had to rely on DeAndre Hunter and Dyson Daniels to make good plays, and they did. And this is another great play by a complimentary player, Zaccharie Risacher. Nasty fake and spins back into it for the jumper. Super smooth. But I think it's become a trend for me, and I'm not concerned necessarily, but I'm just more so like what are we doing here? The clip here, he is again picking the ball up early, and he's doing a lot of this reverse pivoting. I do think some of this is maybe an experimentation by him, because if teams are convinced that you can't do anything, like he's got Javonte Green sliding here, and you'll see what he does with the ball. He finds Bogey, he's open in the corner. But I can't be convinced that this is a more effective way to run pick and roll. Now, the way he's playmaking and the way that he's passing the ball, he is averaging his career high in assists. But I don't think this is a great way to continue to sort of orchestrate an offense, because I'm just not super comfortable on the end results being tough shots for anyone outside of maybe DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic, because those players are consistently capable of making those tough shots. And I thought I had downloaded this clip, but let me pull it up really quick. It's getting to the point where teams are starting to play him as a passer, which is really, really strange, because that's not something that I really expected. Like, he's sort of, in some respects, getting a Tyrese Halliburton treatment when he's coming off these screens, which is strange. And honestly, I'm not comfortable with it. Like, I don't necessarily feel like I'm watching the same player sometimes. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's like in some ways he's not nearly as aggressive as he typically is as a scorer. And I'm sure, like, in some aspects that's actually helped him in some ways. But I also can't help but feel like what we're doing right now offensively is not particularly sustainable as a result. Let me go ahead and grab it. It's it. Ah, man, I hate that I can't pull the full game. I actually don't have the clip. It's embarrassing. So okay, let's go back to what I was talking about then. So I want to talk about some of Risacher's growth. So we showed a couple of his offensive clips. I think he's a way better finisher than I realized or gave him credit for. Here, Javonte presses him out to half court. He gets behind his back to avoid what would have surely been a turnover if he kept going this way, with the way that DeJounte was driving on the ball. And he finishes. I don't really know where he developed this move, but like, he will gather off of one step instead of two. And I think it really catches defenders off guard. So you see, boom, ball's on the floor. He's already going up. And I think that he's become a really comfortable, sort of unorthodox finisher. And I think that's going to help the Hawks a lot because once you become predictable, I think you become a lot easier to be stopped. And a lot of the off ball stuff has been crisp all season, but he's getting better and better at it, at reading just where the players on the floor are and understanding where the open space is going to be. When DeJounte gets in the when DeAndre gets in the middle of the floor here, he knows intuitively that the next and most optimal way for him to get the ball and help the offense out is to cut directly and flash the basket. Goes up strong, draws 2 free throws. I also liked how he looked again in that reverse layup in that really disgusting 3-on-1 scenario that he was able to salvage because he made a great shot and a great decision to use the rim to protect his shot. He also had some transition defense moments that I thought was really impressive, and he's generally become such an incredible defender for his age, which is really cool. Speaking of comfort, I think Kobe is playing the best basketball of his young career. And that's become big because just like the non-Jokic minutes, the non-Jokic minutes are tough, right? When you have a gifted playmaker, the offense is going to be catered to their skill set and their presence. So without them, it can be tough to figure out how you're going to generate offense consistently. And having someone like Kobe, who in college he was really gifted as a finisher and was sort of more of a combo guard, 50, 40, 90 from the field, from the three-point line, and then at the free throw line, he shot 70% at the rim. But when he's able to showcase playmaking like this, then it unlocks a lot of options for this Hawks second unit, which already plays with a lot more movement and set plays than they do with Trae, who's obviously really gifted at improvisation. So Kobe being able to make these reads is really cool. I thought again, like here he's like this is routine stuff, but this is also like very heady, taking care of the ball, just preventing turnovers. You can't afford to have turnovers when you don't have outlier shot making on the court, and so making these easy reads, but also very routine and keeping the offense on schedule is super important. This is also like a great block from Yeezy Missy, who impressed me a lot. Speaking on the finishing, I love the way that he's grown in confidence attacking the rim. I felt like he sort of lacked a lot of that in his first year. Here he goes right at DeJounte Murray, no fear. He knows with the way that the floor is balanced right now, it's going to be tough for anyone to contest it besides DeJounte. And so he's able to keep the ball away from a shot blocker and Trey Murphy and get all the way there. Then with 5 seconds on the clock, I thought this was a really, really impressive play. I also love when teams throw it ahead. So Kobe smartly here, Onyeka comes down. Instead of trying to force the ball here, he throws it to Onyeka and goes back to get it. Onyeka's man is up the floor, so he's also further away from the basket. There's really no reason he should be all the way out here. Kobe notices this, slows down just a little bit. Now watch the gather, keeping it low to keep it from being stolen. Rips through. At this point, he's drawing contact. Still contact. You can see Trae's already calling for the foul because he saw the contact. And he finishes through the rear view contest. Hawks bench gets hyped. That was a really great play. And the understanding of how to get himself going at the defense without having to rely on getting the ball back. And just a really great finish to the quarter. And I just love seeing him play with pace. Like I feel the same. I just love watching rookies and younger players find their footing. And I think we're getting to the point where he's finding his rhythm as the main backup guard for the Hawks. And I still think he needs to get some minutes next to Trae. That's not to say everything was perfect with him. I think he can sometimes panic a little bit when he's trapped or if he feels like he doesn't necessarily want to make a bad play. Here he doesn't have a ton of NBA reps, but you have to be able to read the defense a little bit better here with how aggressive they are. The pass that's one away is going to be pretty tough to make. And so Brandon Boston's already driving on this pass before it's thrown. His only option here at this point is really to either wrap it around to Onyeka or fake it this way and then try and get over the top. Like throwing this pass right here that he ends up throwing, you're just giving the 2 points to the defense. So again, a lot of growth for him going forward, but I think his comfortability as a scorer is getting there, which is really important for this Hawks team. And then just one more point about something that sort of irritates me with the Hawks. They're pretty bad at picking up 3-point shooters at the right pickup points. At least for me, I'm not even saying this like I'm some sort of basketball genius or anything like that. When I saw Trey Murphy You can tell he's about to shoot the ball. Right here, he's shooting the ball. And I know this because I've seen guys do this so many times, but also because I know and I understand Trey Murphy's range. And he is well within his range here. As soon as he's shooting the ball. It's going up. And Clint is there, but he's not there enough. And I don't think that at this point, it should have been Risacher over here, not Clint. So it's just sometimes the communication and transition, or also even like the pickup points where if you have a three-point shooter coming at you and you're a longer, more versatile guy, just crowd them a little bit more. Don't make them feel comfortable getting into that space, because it's these type of open threes that the Hawks can really work to prevent. Some of the more over rotation stuff and stuff like that, that's more philosophy type thing. But these are really good shots for great shooters. And too often the Hawks give up great shots to good shooters because of their pickup points. And so I just wish they would just be a little bit more in tune to stuff like that with personnel. But that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. The Hawks play the Bucks in about 30-ish minutes. Hopefully this gets out with enough time for y'all to tap in before the game, so you know some things to look for as we match up against the Bucks. It would be really nice to start that, keep that momentum up, get a 5-game win streak. Milwaukee is coming off a back-to-back. I don't think the game is super competitive, but Dame and Giannis have been really playing great basketball, so I really want to see how the Hawks sort of attack that pick and roll. And then we'll have the episode tomorrow with my guy Bucks Breakdown. So we're going to bring back a guest. I know it's been a while, but always appreciate y'all tapping in. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you after the Hawks hopefully beat the Bucks.